When you're first learning to code, one of the things that you can get caught up in, and something that I really try to spend a lot of time with you guys doing, is making sure that you're focusing on solving the problem and less about trying to spend so much brain power learning the syntax. And one of the challenges that you are going to be faced with is that even just learning the syntax for a new language, and if you haven't done a lot of programming in general, can be very challenging. It can be overwhelming. And so sometimes just having somebody looking over your screen or your shoulder and looking at your code and giving you tips and tricks while you're writing is one of the best ways for you just picking up the syntax while focusing on the solution. So what I want to do today is look at how to automate that process, how to provide you with the tool that will make sure you can improve on your syntax, but focus more on your solution. And so what I did is I set up a project for you guys, and in that is a README that I just briefly, I'll probably put out a article soon, I hope, and I might do more of a background of why using here, but I just put in those three things. And one of the things you see in there is you to be able to build best practices, good habits now instead of learning bad habits. And again, being able to focus on your solution, not your syntax. So with that said, let's get into it. As you can see in here, I've already set up a base project, and I will provide the link down below. You can go and download this project to get you going, and you can fill out your index.js and index tests however you need to. Or a better way to do it is doing it like I'm doing it here. Now, a quick heads up, I won't get into right now what are package managers, and I'll probably put a link to that video down below, or I will, if you just reach out to me, we can discuss and get into details about what package managers are, or if you just want to roll into Google search or YouTube or wherever and just look it up yourself, you can. I am using a package manager for JavaScript. And before I say any more on that real quick, I am going to be showing today about how using a static code analysis tool, or linting, as it's kind of just generally known as, is the tool that I was referencing at the beginning of this video. So the tool that I want you to be able to use and leverage is a linting tool called ESLint. Yes, I am focusing on JavaScript because most of you guys, you're learning JavaScript as your first language. Sadly, a lot of you guys are learning jQuery with it. That's just a drawback of a lot of boot camps that you're in. And so I'm going to be showing you JavaScript. I will be focusing more on a version of JavaScript called ES6. So I'm not going to get into all those differences, but it will just become the more of the common thing that you're going to be doing. So with that said, I'll jump back into what I was explaining about Yarn and package managers. So I have decided to install Yarn. I love Yarn. It is my preference. It's just one of the two package managers. There's NPM, which you can see here, and there is Yarn, which you can see here. So if you're building out a project and you want to use this, basically you would run these two commands right here and do a yarn init. And there's a couple other things you need to do for using Git and stuff. I'm not going to cover that here. And then, of course, yes, I did npx jest. Now, I really want to encourage you guys, no matter what we're doing, to take a test-driven approach. So as we're doing this today, we're going to be taking a test-driven approach. The example we're using come from Code Wars. If Code Wars does not want me to be sharing some of their ideas and stuff like that, I want to take it down. Otherwise, I'd love to talk to them about doing more promotion of their tool. It is a great way for you to practice programming, and I would welcome any challenges that you guys want to do. Together, you can challenge me on coming up with the best algorithm for something you're learning. So let's get into it. So I've set this project up. Now, as you can see in here, I have my test. It is not going to run because, well, this file is empty. So we need to fill this out. And the example I'm using, just know that one of the things in this array is not correct. It doesn't match the rest of them. So if you look in here, the rest of these numbers are even, and we want to find the one that is the outlier. It doesn't match. It's the only one that's an odd, okay? So there is, we're going to get into here now. If you haven't seen this before, import, export, it's basically a way of pulling in files from other files. And it is something in in JavaScript that we can leverage. So I've gone ahead and used it in this project. We're going to be focusing on Node today. We won't be focusing on browser stuff, and that's okay. You're going to be doing a lot more Node. I hesitate to say Node development, but you'll be using a lot of Node in solutions that leverage that leverage Vue and React and that sort of thing. It is not that common in jQuery. And again, I am not going to cover it, but you've probably heard me rant about boot camps teaching you jQuery and how those jobs are just not ones that are lucrative to you. And there are also projects that are probably dying in some shape or form. If there are senior engineers, I've been doing this for 25 years. If you disagree with me, I love to chat in the comments down below or reach out to me. We can discuss, but it is something I think the boot camps should just stop doing. So rant aside, let's get back into this. So when we're writing code, sometimes what will end up happening is we'll get confused about like, oh, do I put this colon here or do I do this? Or you miss something and you don't know why your code is working and you run into an error. So, all right, let's go ahead and get us going. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this. All right, so we're going to do npx, and the tool we're using, like I said before, is ESLint, and we're going to do this command. So if you want to pause the video and see that right there, it's npx ESLint and init. And it's going to ask us some questions. So we could either just do syntax checking, we could have it find problems, so on and so forth. Go ahead and choose this third option. It's the one that we want to use. And again, we were talking about different ways of bringing in one file from another file. So if you see my test, I'm using import, and I'm going to go over to there, and I keep reaching and touching into the screen, so I apologize if that's distracting. But we're going to go into this right here. We're importing index.js, which is over here. It's currently blank. And so we're bringing that into here, right? So let me close the rest of these. Okay. Awesome. So we're not going to use common.js. We're going to use JavaScript modules. We aren't using Vue or React. Notice in here, it doesn't give you the option for jQuery. I know I'm ranting about this, but I just want to emphasize this. So no, we're not using anything like that. And jQuery is not a framework. It is a library. So we're going to skip all that anyways. And we're not using TypeScript. Think of it as a flavor on top of JavaScript. That's probably the easiest way I can explain it. It is just a different way of writing JavaScript, and it gives you type safety. Don't worry, we're not covering that today, so we're going to say no. And we're going to focus on Node today and not the browser. So go ahead, and I clicked spacebar in here, so we're going to hit Node. Okay, so you can have, what's really neat about ESLint, and when you're initializing this, you could have it inspect your current project and kind of give you a styling. Do not recommend that. You could have it ask you questions and build up one, but I really, really, really believe in standards, especially when you're learning. You're going to learn from other people who have been leaders in our industry, have been doing this for years, and have really bright ideas, especially working in collaborative teams. So ESLint is super helpful, and linting tools in general, for large-scale projects or projects that are open source and working with lots of developers to keep things together, and the team's not focusing on, you didn't use a semicolon, and all that kind of nonsense about syntax preferences. We're going to get away from syntax preferences and focus on solution and design and writing the best kind of algorithms. So the one that I love the most is standard.js. I'm going to select standard.js, and there's different config ways. Don't worry about it. We're going to choose the JavaScript one today. We don't want to do this. So notice that it asked me if I want to use NPM. I had said before that I'm not going to use NPM. I'm going to use Yarn instead. So we're going to say no to this, but we're going to come back to these. So, all right. Now, we need to install these because in our package JSON, it doesn't have any of our linting stuff. So we need to grab these. So I'm going to do these kind of one by one, and I'm going to do yarn add, and then I'm going to do a longer version of this. But basically, when we're adding dependencies, so I'm going to add a dev dependencies. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just know that development tools such as that is a development tool as well, but such as Jest, which is a testing tool, ESLint, which is our static code analysis tool, and even Babel, which is our compiling or transpiling tool that we're going to use. Those are things that we don't want in our output bundle. And so we're letting our package manager know that these things are for development purposes only. Don't worry too much about it. Just know that that's what we're specifying. So we're going to use this one, ESLint config. I'm ignoring the versions. If you want to be specific about the versions or find issues with them, again, we're going to cover that at another time, or if you're watching it, it's possible that you've already kind of gone through this stuff before. All right, so we've grabbed, oops, we've got a little issue here, and wonderful. Okay, so it's installing these dependencies. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, now if we look in our package.json, it's loaded them, and we see this here. So one of the things that can be difficult is having to install and manage ESLint at a global space. Some people prefer this. I don't. I like to keep it with my project. So what we're going to do is we're going to say in our scripts, in our package.json, we're going to simply just say, hey, we want to add lint, right? And it even gives you that recommendation. And we're going to do ESLint. And we're going to say dot. Dot is basically saying, hey, lint all the stuff that's in my project. Now, I've already linted this project, but if I was to restart this project, you would see that there are a lot of warnings, but let's just go ahead and run yarn lint. It's going to tell me a couple of warnings that we have. Okay, so this is kind of common, but what I want to show you is kind of how this would work kind of at scale. And so I'm going to add some stuff in here and kind of mess around with this. All right. And we're going to do, I want you to see this because this is, when this project first started out, it kind of did look more like this. Okay. So now notice that it's got a bunch of things that it's complaining about. Normally when you run, when you first install Jest or something like that, it's going to install it in kind of their format that they prefer. So, when you're using standard JS, one of the things that it's implementing, and I'm not going to go into all of what the rules that standard JS does. I'll put a link down below, but just know that, see how it's enforcing. Normally JavaScript doesn't care about your spaces. It's not like Python. And so you can indent things with 5 or 2 or 3, whatever, it doesn't matter. And so I could manually go in here and read where it's saying that there's an error and see how it's kind of like, oh, it's probably right here. But watch this. If I do -- fix, which it gives me an example, notice it went down from 10 errors. And if this is a brand new project, you probably have 54 errors, which I did when I first started this, down to only 3. Now, these errors with the testing stuff, we're going to ignore for now. And so we're going to pull in, we're going to start writing our actual code. Now, I'm going to kind of fast forward this a little bit by just kind of typing it and looking over to something I've written before. But let's go ahead and here we're going to say val, and notice this is how I am telling Node to basically, or JavaScript to say, hey, I want to be able to make this function, my default function, available to other things that can import it, which is how we're doing it here. Again, I'm not going to go into all this right now, but just kind of know that if you're not familiar with it. Okay, let's start writing our algorithm. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say var odds. I need to set this up, and I'm going to say var, and then I'm going to say evens. And then I'm going to do this. We're going to kind of, yeah, that's fine. And I like things to be lined up like this, you know. Yeah, that's okay. And all right. And then I'm going to do let index. I need to start this out in 0, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to fast forward this a little bit for us doing it this way. All right. Okay, cool. All right, let's go ahead and I'm going to run my test. So yarn test. Oh my goodness. Okay, so something really kind of collapsed here. Now notice it's saying it's missing a semicolon and all sorts of things are weird. Okay, so basically the tester is not able to run this file. And so let's see if we can get some insights from linting. Okay, so it gives us a parsing error too. And now parsing errors are probably one of the more difficult ones, because they can be everything from the transpiler that you're using, like Babel, not being able to understand it. But if we look in here, basically the bottom line is that I need to be using an arrow function, right? That would fix that error. And so if I run this again, my linter will not have a problem, but it is going to tell me a couple of other things. So notice that one of my rules says, hey, I shouldn't be using var, right? Now, what's interesting about this is I can fix all of this again just by doing yarn lint fix, right? Okay, well, this is cool and it fixed most of it, but notice it's saying that something is wrong. Well, that's because my variable up here really should be list, or my reference to it should be value, either way. And while this is neat because I can go through and run this, my promise to you earlier was, wouldn't it be great if you could have kind of a coach that sat over your shoulder and kind of encouraged you how to program? So we're going to change this a bit. I am using IntelliJ's IDEA. If you are using VS Code, that's great. It has an ESLint plugin that's very similar. And no matter what you do, I will provide a link down to the VS Code setup. And there are tons of videos out there on how to do it, but set it up to be automated. So that way, when you save your files or do anything, it will automatically lint your code for you, give you kind of hints about what to do, how to program. And then you'll notice in here, I want it to fix my stuff for me as I'm typing. So this is great. Okay. Now, if I came back in here and I started typing with var, I want you to see something. So notice that it highlights it and it tells me right away, hey, you should use let or const. Okay, well, I will use let instead. And then it complains again and it says, well, odds, this variable, is it's never reassigned. So, and it wants me to use a const instead. Okay, well, even if you don't know what that means, you could just do this and say, all right, I want you to fix this line. And it will do that for you. Or if I just save it, it'll fix that line too. Now, without even getting into what's the difference between a let and a const, which I could research, it's helping me write good code from the very beginning. And it's helping me find issues. And if I do something strange like this, it's like, wait, what are you doing there? And it will correct that as I hit save. So now I can focus on my algorithm. So if I go back to my test and I run yarn test, it works, it passes, and I have my coverage. So anyways, this is a great way. Having it enabled as you type lets you be able to figure out things as you're going along, saving things, adjusting. I could even add in here, maybe I want to do some additional information in here, adding some options and improving this. It would let me know if I mistype something, if I'm not using something. This variable isn't being used, an unused parameter. Actually, that's just from my system in general, but you have to set that up. But anyways, this is a very, 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 very powerful tool to use. The more plugins that you provide for it or configurations and rules, it'll even give you more insights. Again, with this, we will see when I do this and it says, oh, can't do that because describe is not something that I can do. So let's do this. We will say yarn add dev, right? That was a shortened version, but I want to do ESLint, and let's see, can we do jest? Is it just config? Fig? Okay, it's not something like that. So I'm just gonna kind of cheat real quick, and I'm gonna do ESLint jest, and we want to see, I'm gonna pull this in over for you so you can kind of read along with me. All right, so we want to be able to do this. All right, cool. So we're going to just simply do ESLint. It's a plugin. So we're going to follow along with this. And now if we do yarn add -d, okay. And it is telling us that we also want to do something interesting here. We want to just do the plugins. Now, we're just going to let it do its auto configures. And notice in here, we can set it up to using some globals too. So let's go ahead and do that. So that's in our configuration file, which is right here. And we are going to go into plugins. So we're just going to put this in here. And now you notice, look at that. It auto fixed my configuration file to be in my standards, right? And then the other thing that we want to do is we want to be able to use some globals. So we'll do an env in here. And we're almost good to go. And now if I clear this and run yarn lint, wow, that is pretty stinking awesome. Oops. And notice in here, it is telling me something that I just didn't notice in here. So I had some duplicate keys in here. Even better. Run into an issue, you're golden. All right, let me know if you found this video helpful, or if you disagree with anything or have any questions, let me know down below, or we'll just talk in our next sessions together. Thanks so much, and I look forward to speaking with you next.